So as a coach, your job is to be right and to put people in good positions. When you use absolute statements and when you put people in a position that you saw somebody do, you're going to be wrong more often than not. All right, guys, welcome back to Jerk Block Talk. I'm Jason Fernandez. We're here at CrossFit Rife, and today this scenario, we're going to talk about a scenario that came up this week in our gym. It's something that I see very regularly at the level 1 setting, which is somebody, we're talking about setups in different positions, right? So think about the setup for the squat, the setup for the deadlift, the setup for the press, whatever it may be, and we'll talk about the deadlift specifically. So I had a client come in the gym, and I was tweaking their deadlift, and they said, hey, my previous coach told me that I should have vertical shins in the setup. And the problem, it's not so much that, hey, vertical shins are bad, whatever. I get there's a time and a place for that. But there's a lot of coaches, and we see this regularly in the level 1 and in the level 2, coaches are using absolute statements with no context other than like, your body should be at this angle. So I'm gonna use Cassidy here for a second. And what we're gonna do is, I'm gonna have him do a deadlift, right? So just do a normal deadlift. Regular deadlift in the setup. Good. On this one, pull the knees back a little bit as you stand up. Yes, his knees will pull his knees back, get his bar, the bar in a straight line. Now, in the deadlift setup, here's how we would describe the setup for the deadlift in CrossFit. Feet, somewhere between hip width and shoulder width. Hands about 1 thumb's distance outside the thighs. In the setup, what we want to see down at the bottom, go ahead and down to the bottom, is going to be the shoulder slightly forward of the bar with the hips somewhere between the knee and the shoulders. Go ahead and relax. Now notice in that description, there's no absolute statements. It gives me wiggle room because all of my athletes have different limb lengths, different anthropometrics, all of that stuff, and that stuff should be taken into account when you put somebody into a position. That's why people get really bent about the toes slightly turned out when we give that recommendation. That's a good starting point for most people, and that's what we're looking for, is most cubed, most athletes, most of the time in most positions. So I'm gonna give you a perfect example. Cassidy's gonna get in the deadlift position for the setup. Now, what I'm gonna have him do is, I want him to pull his knees back just a little bit right there. So that's a position I'm pretty happy with. At this point, I'm gonna say, hey, Cassidy, I want you to have vertical shins in this position. Vertical shins, pull them all the way back. Now, this is gonna be problematic. This is a problem, a straight line from the shoulder to the hips. Now, when he stands up, he just has a hip hinge. Go ahead and stand up. And we really don't get to use any of the quads in that equation, okay? Same thing would be if I had him do a squat. Cassidy has pretty good mobility, but let's go ahead and face forward. If I have him do a squat, but I have him do it with his feet straight, go ahead and squat. Not too bad, but some people can't manage that position. So here's the big takeaway for all of this. You're looking for a certain body part to be relative to another body part. We'll use the squat, for example. We want the heels to be roughly shoulder width apart, all right? Not the toes necessarily, the heels, because from that position, he can toe out a little bit and still not adjust his stance width, okay? If I was gonna have him get into the front rack position for a front squat, all I'm looking for is for the hands to be where the index finger is outside the shoulder. It could be a little bit wider if he has the mobility to do that. If he was to go a little bit wider, again, I'm in this position, I want to only go as high as I can, or sorry, as wide as I can keep my elbows high, okay? So as a coach, your job is to be right and to put people in good positions. When you use absolute statements and when you put people in a position that you saw somebody do, you're gonna be wrong more often than not. So you should have some wiggle room in your description for a stance. Now there's some non-negotiables like don't let your knees fly in and touch each other, don't lift with a rounded back. Those are not the things that I'm talking about. I'm talking about general setup. Everything else should have context associated with it, like meaning what does the movement look like after I put them in that setup. From there, I will make adjustments, but I have to get them started in a general setup, watch them move, and then make adjustments from there. You will have some athletes who are hobbit size who might have like vertical shins. But if I have a 6'10" athlete or a 6'8" athlete, which we have at least 2 of in this gym, they can't have vertical shins because it's just gonna put their hips so far behind them and put them into a less than ideal position. So body part relative to another body part. Think about everything that we're talking about. Sumo deadlift high pull. Your feet should be wider than your squat stance. My hands should be about 2 thumbs distance width, but I can go wider in the sumo deadlift high pull, but I'm only gonna go as wide as I can keep my elbows high, right? So there's some rules with those, but nothing is finite or absolute because I have different athletes of different sizes. So when you're looking at movement and you're putting people in start and setup positions, I'm looking for body parts relative to other body parts, okay? Play around with that stuff. If you have questions about how that works or what you should be looking at, drop those in the comments. If you guys like this content, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and we'll see you next time. Thanks.